something came into my mind that I thought would be handy to mention tonight. I was watching my ladies play Whitney on Sunday, and one of the girls playing for us was 17. And why is that noticeable? Well, it's long been the case with the men's game that a 17-year-old can play up, provided they're not in the front row, if there's a risk assessment and a parents consult form. But that has never been the case with a ladies' game. You have to be 18 to play in a ladies' game, or even train with contact. But this season they've introduced a new set of rules or set of guidelines where it's coming into parallel with the young men that a 17-year-old can actually play up.
Yes.
Which a lot of clubs would be grateful for. But I just wanted to give a word of warning, really, because the RFU have put out a fairly good set of FAQs and guidance for managing that process. And it's quite interesting because yes, obviously there's got to be a risk assessment. Are they physically strong enough? Are they mentally strong enough to deal with it? But also they shouldn't just be playing up to fill a shirt if you're short of numbers. That's not really what it's been designed for. It's all about player progression or player development or some other external factor, but it shouldn't really just be about pulling a shirt on.
The coaches then have got to be very responsible in their selection criteria.
Absolutely. The coaches have got to work with the parents. And so in the case, the one I did, for example, it's about player development. Very, very, very talented young girl. Scored 2 tries on Sunday. Very, very talented young girl. She'll be going places, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't keep her at Windsor, to be honest, because she'll naturally spread her wings and fly on. But it's about development. So the coach, myself, Dad, we sat down and talked about what that development's going to look like.
Yes.
How that's going to be. We documented it and batted it backwards and forwards between us. And then obviously they had to sign it because whilst it's a risk assessment, it's also a parental consent form. Got that signed off. And I happen to be the safeguarding officer for the club, so I can do that, but it is actually a safeguarding issue. It's not a playing issue because they may be playing for a ladies' team, but they are still under 18 child.
Yeah.
And it's keeping a focus on the fact that they are a child, and it's all about their welfare. And if some of their ambitions or whatever aren't realistic, they want to develop, they want to shoot off here and get picked for county, and no, hang on, it's about your development. We'll take it one step at a time. We'll do it with Dad and with Mum, and
as it should be with any player, I think.
Well, yes, yeah. But it's new for the ladies' game.
Yes.
And I would just advocate people, certainly while everybody's getting used to this, to make sure that you do cross the T's, dot the I's, get your paperwork done, because without a shadow of a doubt, people are going to be looking. Your county safeguarding manager, your RDOs or your CRCs, or even up at the big house, the safeguarding team. They'll say, we know you've had a 17-year-old playing, can we see the paperwork? It's not a question of, we'll do it later. Just protect yourself and get it done, because this is new and people have got the old radar out. So get it done properly, folks.
Yeah. With the success of the World Cup over in Ireland, and obviously England reaching the final, are numbers continuing to grow? Is it still a growth sport?
It really is. I mean, the Inner Warrior campaign that's been going on recently has been very, very successful. It's been marketed well. It's fresh as an image on social media and on TV and in the Touchline and various other publications. And it's not banging a drum. It's sort of plucking at people's, like young people that are not involved in sport. I'd like to get involved, but I don't know how to. It's hitting the right note.
Yeah,
and it's sort of saying, "Oh, come down. We're friendly," and any concerns are sort of subliminally being addressed in the marketing material and whatever. And They very helpfully have made available to the clubs all the imagery and slogans and artwork, and I've seen on the ladies' Facebook Rugby Network Exchange, whatever it's called these days, and it's just been renamed, which has got me. But I've seen all these clubs doing their different posters, and they're all different, but the message is really good because it sort of runs as a thread through all of the messages. It's a friendly environment. It's fun, which is, you know, for a lot of youngsters, it's really an important message to get on. So yeah, it's good, very good indeed.
Excellent.
Healthy, I think, is the expression.
Pardon?
Healthy. There's
Healthy.
a lot of young people joining.
Yeah, and that's good to get people involved
Yeah.
in sport. Excellent. Just to move on now, there was an interesting article in the Daily Telegraph last Friday.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I found it quite sad because it was really, it was written by Daniel Schofield, and he was looking at London Welsh, who last weekend opened their Middlesex and Hertfordshire Division 1 match against Watford.
Level 9.
Level 9, and how the mighty have fallen. And I found it sad because certainly during my era, the 70s and the 80s, London Welsh were an outstanding club.
Yeah.
Providing countless internationals for Wales, providing the captain of and still the only Lions side to win in New Zealand, and that was John Dawes, the likes of JPR Williams, Gerald Davis, Merv the Swerve Davis, John Taylor, a whole host of top-class players. They used to attract massive crowds. To Old Deer Park. They played a very expansive, very exciting game of rugby, and then the leagues came. And the leagues don't lie. And unfortunately, London Welsh went through difficult stages, then made their way back to the Championship, had to move away from Old Deer Park, their spiritual home, took the game to Oxford. Never really worked for them, and unfortunately last January the news came, the RFU pulled the plug on it, and I suppose the one fortunate aspect for them was that during this professional era they retained an amateur side, so in fact they were fortunate to have a team in level 9, and their ambitions now are to use that team as a vehicle to get them back up into, say, the Championship rugby at least.
Because the significance of that is that if they didn't have that amateur side in place, they would have gone bomp straight down to level 12.
That's correct,
at the bottom. So it actually provided a bit of a break for them to stop them.
Yeah, and if we recall the troubles that both Richmond and London Scottish experienced in the earlier days of the professional game, where they had to start from the very lowest level, London Welsh have a slight advantage, and so their ambition is within 5 years to get back into the national leagues, which I think is commendable. And it would make certainly some of the ex-players and the host of supporters they've had over the years extremely proud. But I suppose it does actually beg the question, you know, it has to be sustainable. They can't keep on going through these periods of where they overreach themselves. I don't know what you're feeling on that.
I think it's a very ambitious plan, really, 5 years, because I doubt they've kept any of their paid players. So they're taking their amateur team and perhaps augmenting it with some people that are sticking around or people that would go. But what they're going to find is they've come down out of the paid bracket into the almost, without a shadow of a doubt, completely amateur bit. But as they come back up again, they're going to start meeting the paid bit again, because as I know not everybody loves it, but players are played at National 3, Southern Counties North, South West 1 East, our old level, and I'm not sure about the level 7, but they're going to start bumping into the paid bit again. And so they may have a 5-year plan, but the cash is going to have to be knocking around about the year 2 mark, end of the year 3 mark, because that is a tough little band of leagues. Level 6, level 5, it's a tough band of leagues, and they'll be probably reaching for their checkbook around about then.
Yeah, and you know they've got to have money in the bank. Now I know Sonny Parker now is leading the coaching. He's decided to stay on and lend a hand. I mean, he's going to be dealing with recreational players. They have a big underage junior section.
Yes, they do.
So
Massive.
there could be players coming through. I mean, London is a big city with a number of universities, so you can always perhaps tap into that university population. But that can be, you know, transitional. I don't think it's as easy as a lot of people imagine. And I think that what their supporters would have got used to over the years would have been players who play week in, week out. But because some of the recreational players, you know, it is purely recreational, even if it's a London Welsh, even if there's a dream at the end of it, they still will have weekends off because of work, because of variable weddings, because of holidays, which they have to take in the rugby season. So they are going to have a number of problems. They are going to be confronted with a number of problems. But, you know, I'd wish them well. I'd only have, you know, great desire to see them up there.
You never
again.
like to see things like that.
No.
Never like to see.
And looking around some of the other leagues, you know, in the north, two great sides up there are playing in the lower levels now. Waterloo, who were, you know, a big side in the 80s. If you went up there, you would anticipate quite a welcome from people like Jim Siddle and the Gallagher at the flanks, and you know, very physical players, very aggressive players. And if they weren't playing, you had a fellow called Reedy who'd come around and kick you up the hole lift just to remind you he was on the field. So you know, they've gone down now. Liverpool St Helens, who were actually at championship level at one stage, the old club of Dowie Morris. You know, they've dropped down, and sometimes you question really the value of leagues when, I don't know, perhaps I'm being too sentimental. Do you think that these clubs, you know, just really they just fade away from our memories, which I think is a great shame.
I think after what's gone on over the last couple of years, I think the management team will probably see going back down to level 9 as a bit of a rest. Time to regroup and get back on track again. But no, you can only wish them well.
Yes, and hopefully it will work out with them. And then finally, we were talking about a new CEO at
Yes,
Twickenham.
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, the article I read is interesting because plainly he sees a very large part of his role being grassroots rugby. Hooray. And he touches on in his article on businesses having a side issue of running a rugby team as opposed to a rugby club running a rugby team. And I think he makes the point. He makes a very good point because I know, because I'm one of them, running a rugby club is running a business, and it's flipping hard work because you've got to get all your financials right and all your processes right and whatever. And I can understand how he is thinking that rugby becomes almost secondary for some people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're the words of Jeff Probyn, and in terms of thinking, is it really a master plan from the RFU really to just push grassroots rugby to one side, to give them 3G pitches so they can make a few bob out of that, not
Turn
just
it into
through
a business,
rugby. Giving them help with the development facilities, so that can be bringing a few bob extra there. And are we going to just be left floating around whilst all of the energy, all of the money goes purely into the professional game?
Yeah, well, let's wait and see. But if what Jeff is saying is right, and he has got a community rugby focus, let's see what that looks like, because I'm not convinced in providing 3G pitches or whatever is going to be the answer. It's about empowering clubs and taking some of the responsibility off them and lowering the crossbar when it comes to accreditation and whatever. Yeah,
I mean, there is a lot of paperwork floating around, which seems to me to be just doled out week in, week out to clubs, to guys that, you know, have got families, they've got jobs to hold down, and yet they've got it's a massive undertaking. Do you think that is also one of the reasons then for a decline in the number of volunteers? I mean, you know, you go back 10, 15 years, you'd have guys, you'd have managers for most teams, and you'd have secretary, assistant secretary, fixture secretaries, and yet these positions seem to shrink each year from, you know, just going around the clubs talking.
Absolutely. Certainly my experience, getting the volunteers to actually do the game, i.e. the coaches and the managers and whatever, that's not too much of a problem. Where it is a problem is with the admin jobs or with the more business roles, because it is so onerous. You know, in not so long ago, a job that you could fulfil and do it with a couple of hours on a Wednesday evening or something, you're putting a day aside to do it, you know, to do this survey or fill out this paperwork or apply for this or apply for that. It is questionable, really, whether the term volunteer really applies anymore, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, so that's one step our new CEO should be addressing them.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are imposed upon clubs. So in order to tick a box with Sport England, the RFU imposed this set of rules, and yeah, okay, the clubs have to jump through the hoop because they still want support, etc., etc. But the knock-on effect of imposing it is not really being looked at, and we're just dying in a sea of crap. And it's not surprising that, yeah, I agree with you. I think there is a decline in volunteers because of that.
Yeah, yeah. And one way we feel of addressing it is actually just lightening the
lightening the load. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.